The moment that still makes my hands shake happened when my sister leaned across the kitchen counter, lowered her voice like she was doing me a favor, and said, "It's only for family." That was it. That was her explanation for why I wasn't invited to my own parents' milestone anniversary dinner, an event I only found out about because I accidentally saw the group chat pop up on her phone. I remember staring at her, waiting for the punchline, waiting for her to laugh and say she was joking, but she didn't. She just shrugged, like excluding me was the most natural thing in the world. So tell me honestly, if your own sister told you that you weren't considered family enough to celebrate your parents' love story, what would you have done? I'm still asking myself if I went too far, because what I did next changed everything between us, maybe forever. Part of me feels justified, and part of me still lies awake replaying that moment in my head, wondering if there was another way. But to understand why this cut so deep, you have to understand where I come from and what my family dynamic has always been like, because this wasn't just about one dinner. This was about years of being pushed aside, minimized, and treated like an optional extra in my own family. Growing up, my parents were the kind of couple people admired. They'd been together for decades, through job losses, health scares, and raising two kids who couldn't have been more different. My sister, Claire, is older than me by 3 years, and from the moment she was born, she was the golden child. She was confident, outspoken, and knew how to command attention. I was quieter, more observant, the kid who tried to keep the peace. My parents loved us both, but in different ways, and I learned early on that Claire's needs and opinions tended to take up more space. Still, we were a family. We had Sunday dinners, holidays, inside jokes. I genuinely believed that no matter how annoying my sister could be, or how often she rolled her eyes at me, there was an unbreakable bond there. When I moved out for college and later for work, I stayed close. I called my parents every week. I drove back for birthdays and holidays. I thought I was doing everything right. Then, a few months before my parents' anniversary, things started to feel off. Claire began acting secretive. She'd take calls in another room, stop texting when I walked in, and when I asked what was going on, she'd say it was nothing important. I didn't push. I assumed she was planning a surprise for Mom and Dad, and honestly, I was happy she was taking the lead. She'd always been more organized, more decisive. I figured I'd help however she needed. One afternoon, I was at her place, helping her babysit her kids, when her phone buzzed on the counter. I wasn't snooping. It lit up with a notification from a group chat titled, "Anniversary Night Point." I froze. Before I could stop myself, I saw the names in the chat: Claire, her husband, our parents, a couple of cousins. My name wasn't there. My stomach dropped, but I told myself there had to be an explanation. When I asked her about it later, that's when she said the words that still echo in my head. "It's only for family." She said it casually, like she was explaining why I couldn't come to a work meeting that didn't concern me. I laughed, because I genuinely thought she was joking, but she didn't laugh back. She sighed and said that since I didn't live nearby anymore, and wasn't as involved, it made sense to keep it small. She said adding more people would complicate things. She said a lot of things. None of them made it hurt any less. I reminded her that I was their daughter too. That I'd flown across the country for less important events. That this wasn't just any dinner. It was celebrating the people who raised us. She crossed her arms and told me not to make a big deal out of it. "They don't even know yet," she said. "It's supposed to be a surprise. Don't ruin it." I left her house feeling like I'd been punched in the chest. On the drive home, my thoughts spiraled. Was I really that expendable? Had I done something wrong without realizing it? I went back through old conversations, old visits, looking for clues. The more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't the first time Claire had decided something. For the family? Without me. There was the Christmas she planned at her house and told me last minute that there wasn't enough space. The vacation she booked with our parents and framed as a quick getaway. Even though it lasted a week, each time, I'd swallowed my feelings and told myself it wasn't worth starting a fight. But this time felt different. This time, it felt like she was rewriting the definition of family and erasing me from it. For a few days, I didn't say anything. I cried. I talked to my partner, who was furious on my behalf. I even considered calling my parents and telling them the truth, but I stopped myself. I didn't want to ruin their surprise. I didn't want to be the problem. At least, that's what I told myself. But then something shifted. The more I thought about sitting at home, while my entire family celebrated without me, the more something hardened inside my chest. I realized that staying quiet was exactly what Claire was counting on. She knew I hated conflict. She knew I'd put everyone else's comfort before my own. And for the first time in my life, I didn't want to do that anymore. So I started thinking, if I wasn't invited to the official celebration, what could I do that would still honor my parents and, maybe, force a conversation that was long overdue? That's when an idea formed, and I'll admit, it felt a little reckless. But it also felt empowering. I decided to plan my own celebration for my parents, one that they couldn't ignore, and that would make it very clear that I was, in fact, family. I booked time off work. I coordinated with a few relatives who weren't in Claire's inner circle. I even reached out to some of my parents' old friends. I kept it a surprise, just like Claire had wanted, but for a different day. As the plans came together, a part of me worried I was being petty. Another part of me felt like I was finally standing up for myself. I imagined the look on Claire's face when she realized I wasn't going to quietly disappear, and I hated that that thought gave me a sense of satisfaction. The day before my parents' anniversary dinner, Claire called me. She sounded stressed, complaining about reservations and seating arrangements. She didn't mention the fact that I wasn't invited. She acted like everything was normal, and that almost hurt more than her original comment. I listened, said noncommittal things, and hung up with my heart racing. So that was the situation I was in, standing on the edge of a decision that I knew would change the dynamic in my family. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause for a second and really think about it. If you were in my shoes, would you have stayed quiet to keep the peace, or would you have done something, anything, to assert your place? Comment below what you would have done, because I'm still not sure if there was a right answer here. The night of my parents' anniversary dinner arrived, and I spent it pacing my living room, refreshing social media, even though I told myself I wouldn't. I saw photos later, of course. Smiling faces, champagne glasses, a big banner that said, "Happy Anniversary." I wasn't in any of them. I turned my phone off and went to bed early, because I couldn't stand to see it. The next evening was my planned surprise. I invited my parents over under the pretense of a casual dinner. When they walked in and saw the decorations, the photos from their early years together, and the friends and relatives waiting to shout, "Surprise!" my mom burst into tears. My dad hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. They kept asking how I'd pulled it all off, and I told them it was my way of celebrating them, because they deserved to be celebrated more than once. That's when Claire arrived. She hadn't been invited. Someone else had told her. The look on her face when she saw the room was a mix of shock, anger, and something else I couldn't quite place. She pulled me aside and hissed that I was stealing her moment, that I was causing drama for no reason. For the first time, I didn't back down. I told her calmly that family wasn't something you got to gatekeep. I told her how much it hurt to be excluded. I told her I was done pretending it didn't. Our parents noticed the tension and asked what was wrong. Claire tried to brush it off, but I spoke up. My voice shook, but I said the truth. I told them I hadn't been invited to the anniversary dinner because it was only for family. The room went silent. My mom looked at Claire like she'd never seen her before. My dad's face fell. They were angry. Not at me, at her. They told her that she didn't get to decide who their family was. They apologized to me over and over, saying they never would have agreed to a celebration without both their children. Claire cried. She said she was just trying to make things easier, that she didn't think it was a big deal. But it was too late. The words were out there. The aftermath was messy. There were arguments, long conversations, and a lot of uncomfortable honesty. Claire and I didn't speak for weeks. When we finally did, it was different. The easy closeness we once had was gone, replaced by something more cautious. But there was also a strange sense of relief. Everything that had been simmering under the surface was finally acknowledged. My relationship with my parents grew stronger. They made more of an effort to include me, to check in, to make sure I felt valued. As for Claire, We're still figuring it out. She's apologized, in her own way, and I'm trying to forgive her, not because she deserves it, but because I deserve peace. Looking back, I don't know if I handled it perfectly. I know I could have confronted her earlier. I know I could have spared myself a lot of stress. But I also know that staying silent would have hurt me more in the long run. Sometimes, standing up for yourself means risking being seen as the villain in someone else's story. If there's a lesson in all of this, it's that family isn't defined by who controls the guest list. It's defined by respect, honesty, and the willingness to listen when someone says they're hurting. If you were on my side, hit that like button. If you want to hear more stories like this, make sure you subscribe. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section, because I read them all. I'll see you all in the next story.